I have someone who's written in and wants to know how to handle multiple people who are crashing out on the job. Hi, my name is Dr. Natalie Jones. I'm a licensed therapist. I did a post a while ago, maybe a week or so ago, about people crashing out at work. And this woman writes, people really are crashing out. Someone started yelling and ranting at a work event. People who might normally just be irritated are completely snapping. It feels like so many people who used to smile and be pleasant to be around have become really negative and unpleasant to be around, to the point that every day feels like a new obstacle course. She's asking, what should she do? How should she handle it? And man, oh man, this is a tricky one. So usually when things get like this and you have multiple people who are crashing out and who are snapping and who are, mean and who don't want to be there, that is usually a sign of the workplace. So that's usually a strong indicator that there's something going on in your workplace and people are not feeling it. Whether that means that people are bombarded down with work, manage a new, or there's a certain type of management style, and where this is what I've seen before, and where there's a lot of micromanaging. There could be a lot of microaggressions at the workplace, but usually it's a top-down effect. When you start seeing that ripple effect and multiple people are crashing out, that is a sign that the workplace in itself is not in a good space. And I've worked at a place like that. I've also consulted with places that are like that. And it is not, chances are likely that it is not going to get better, because the top, meaning management and so forth, is usually not going to go anywhere, or they've been hired to run the place, and be overbearing and have their foot on employees' necks. So chances are that's not going to go anywhere. And so I'm trying to think. In the past, an employee has snapped at me. Just to be frank, she came to work and said, I heard you were talking shit about me, and F you. She said it in front of like 2 or 3 colleagues. She was just out there with it. Okay, all right. Well, and I said what I said, and if you want to have a conversation about it, I'm happy to tell you what I said. And we can do it, we can do it in a respectful way, colleague to colleague, behind closed doors. She didn't want to do that. So what I did was I protected myself by telling the manager. So I always believe that when people get volatile, it's not that, when people get volatile like that, you always want to tell your manager, and put that in writing. Because if someone escalates, then that could definitely have a different outcome. But if my manager knows about it and then that person escalates, I have now warned that manager, and so if that person escalates, I have a right to defend myself in the ways that are necessary to de-escalate that attack. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. And so I told my manager, and they kind of nipped it in the bud and ended up getting rid of her, or working on getting rid of her, is what I'll say. So she was already kind of on their radar, and that just added to it. And I didn't want to be put in a position like that, but you kind of leave me no choice. Respect me and I'll respect you. You don't have to like me. I don't care about that, but respect me and I'll respect you. And so that's what I would say. Like, if it gets to a point where it's escalation and people are yelling and shouting at you, or just in general in a way that feels unsafe, or just unstable or very chaotic, you need to alert your manager if your manager is not already aware, just so that could be on record. If there's, in my opinion, there's always strength in numbers as well. So if you saw it, then and you and like three other people, four or five, if you guys kind of collectively share the experience, and you could do that separately, you could send an email. I would definitely, recommend alerting through the proper channels, just so that you could stay safe. If it's a person that you feel um, like you have a good rapport with, you can always take them to the side. But again, when somebody's unraveling like that, it's still always better to inform management, so that they could take care of that. Even if you have a conversation, a sidebar, and say, how are things going? That escalation and all of that other stuff, that's beyond your pay grade. Unless you're there for crisis de-escalation, and that's part of your job title and what you're there for. But otherwise, that kind of stuff is beyond the simple employees. But take that route, document. So you have documentation. That you did what on what day, you observe what on what day, but always make sure that you keep a record of that as necessary. So thanks so much for asking that. I'm sorry that this has happened. The other thing is, sometimes I don't know where you work or anything, but I know that sometimes companies have like, one, they may have surveys, so you can report it there. But also, you sometimes companies will have like team meetings, so you can have a discussion about morale there. If morale is really low, that's just really going to kick up the chaos, and so everybody's going to say this and say that, and it might be a lost cause. So if the overarching morale is low, and if that's the case, that means that conditions are worsening, and they're probably not going to be changing. And so if your morale is low, you have to do what you have to do to take care of yourself. But sometimes you just may need to put things on the radar for your manager at like one of these team meetings. Maybe you guys can come up with solutions as a team that really addresses the problem. Every company is different. Every company's interventions are going to be different. Whatever each company is going to spend money on is going to be different, because one of the things that I've done and still do is consulted with corporations in the past and gone in to talk with them, help mediate and things like that. So that may be an option if they're willing to go that route. Some companies are like, no, you either suck it up and like it, or you find a new job. So the attitude of management is really going to be something that you want to key in here. So thanks so much for asking that. Good luck. Take care, and I hope that things work out. But I also here's another last gem, just for everybody, not just you, but for everybody. Here in the United States, things are going to get real tight real soon, in terms of finances and what people are going to have to spend money on due to all of the expenses we're going to be introduced to. So with that being said, with people being stretched thin and already having financial challenges, my prediction is you may see an uptick in this, especially if corporations aren't raising salaries to they're not compensating their employees to offset the crazy inflation that people are going through. The sun is rising, but so there is that. So you have to take those things into account, and how that is going to impact many workplaces soon. Thanks so much.